Welcome to the third episode of Earth Warrior 7, where we're seriously trying to find a way to corral nuclear weapons. That's a big order. A lot's happened since the last episode. Let me start with a couple of things that are all related. Stephen Miller, who clearly has the ear of President Trump, has sounded off in great detail about his beliefs that the United States can rightly take over the portion of Denmark that we call Greenland. It's a huge piece of territory. It has a lot of strategic importance. There's no doubt about it, especially when you're talking about the Arctic Circle. And then, you go between Greenland and Iceland through the Icelandic Gap. It's a very, very important area for shipping. When we have our military exercises, we put our fleets forward to that even to kind of constrain the Russians. So he's not talking through his hat, but what he's saying is, I guess since they're a little country and don't have a big army, and we're not, we've got all these needs, that somehow we're entitled to that piece of ground. He's wrong, of course. But I don't think that is going to make a difference. What's going on, it's come out of those discussions we've seen in the few days since President Trump and Miller and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the head of the CIA, Hegseth, Secretary of War, have moved the project to take over Venezuela successfully at the outset, but now they've got the part of the iceberg that's under the water, which is a pretty big part of the iceberg in Venezuela. It's becoming really apparent that the United States, under all this bluff and all this activity, is pulling back internationally. It's pulling back from trying to be a global power. It's going to go back to the old way of doing things on a regional sphere of influence basis. It's something that's happened in the past. And it's something that Putin has constantly talked about. I'm sure he's talked to President Trump about it in private in all those meetings they've had that there's no record of. The Russians have been pushing for a multipolar world. And of course, the people in China, Xi and the Communist Party there, they've been pushing for the same thing. And they're actively trying to extend their sphere of influence down into the South China Sea for sure, if not down into the Philippines. So we've apparently, with a whole lot of sound and fury, made a big decision already to pull back and become a regional power, which it'll be hard for Americans to accept that, but that's pretty much what's going on. But in doing that, if you're in a military situation and you're retreating, which is what this represents as a retreat, the final stages of a retreat, and repositioning, that's why Greenland's coming up. Greenland's very important to the defense of the hemisphere. And so some really cagey arguments could be made about taking it over. So that's a very significant development. It's more than just wishful thinking. It's very significant. And I think it feeds into this whole discussion of nuclear weapons. February 5th, which is just a few weeks from now, would be the anniversary, or would be the year we try to sign again or renew the New START treaty for nuclear weapons with Russia. It's kind of a waste of time, really. They haven't been coming checking their stuff or checking our stuff for a year or two, and it's not going anywhere, and it doesn't get its arms around the whole issue of nuclear weapons, which that there's 9 countries: North Korea, Israel, Pakistan, India, France, Germany, Russia, China, us. We have nuclear weapons, and Israel. So we've got to figure out how to do that. And fortunately, there's been a big effort that's been going on just steadily for years now, since the late 1990s, to have a international treaty for the prohibition of nuclear weapons, and it's very well thought out. It's been done under the guises of the United Nations, and it's got 95 countries have signed it already. 74 of those have ratified, meaning it's law in their country. None of the nuclear powers have signed it, even, let alone ratified it. None of the 9 nuclear powers have signed or ratified it. And so that means if we haven't signed or ratified it, all of our allies, NATO, they haven't either, because we've placed our nuclear weapons at the disposal of NATO, theoretically, if they were attacked by the Russians. And of course, 2 of the nuclear weapon states, France and England, they're part of NATO. So now we're going into Greenland, and we probably are. Not a damn thing we can do about it. I think that's going to happen. So it's kind of in that window where they're talking about it. We've seen it happen before. So the question is, what's the right way to protect ourselves when we're repositioning forces during a retreat? Very dangerous time in military operations is a retreat. You can lose your butt. You can really get in trouble. So I think what we need to do is to encourage President Trump or Stephen Miller, if that's the avenue to get to him, to get to President Trump, to sign the treaty. It's called the United Nations Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And we'd be the very first nuclear weaponed nation to sign. Then others would find it easier to sign. Plus, if we're going to be crossing swords in one degree or another with the Danes and NATO over this whole Greenland thing, it would be really advisable for us to start a process in motion to restrict nuclear weapons. So it kind of fits. It really does. It's like a nest on a doorstep. It's just whether President Trump will see fit to suddenly, out of nowhere, sign this thing. My thinking is it's probably the one thing that he can do, really, where he could actually earn the Nobel Peace Prize. So I'd like you to just check out that the process that's set out in the Treaty for Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Check that out. And then realize that even after President Trump signs it, it'll be a long time before the Senate ratifies it, because the Senate will all have their issues. Everybody's going to get their finger in the pie. But basically our process will start at the head of the line, and we'll be able to form a new international order, really, around nuclear weapons. And we'll be continuing the process of reducing the total number. I think we ought to really look at this. I really do. And I think if we don't, we're stupid, because that whole thing with Greenland and Denmark and NATO could really go south in a heartbeat. So that's what I want to say. It's called the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And I've already written a letter to the President. I'll see if I can find a copy of that to enclose with this episode. Anyhow, thanks for your attention. Give it some thought. Thanks.